Hello everyone, I'm Grandmaster Denes Boros, and today I'm going to show you how to attack properly. So this game was played recently versus International Master Ibrahimli. I was playing a white, and I will show you what's the difference and how can you attack if your opponent actually neglects their development and their duties to castle. So let's take a look. D4, not the most popular move. E4 is the most popular one, but D4 is equally as good. E6, again tempting me to get into the French, but this time I go knight f3, d5, bishop g5. The point being, I want this bishop outside the cage, so I don't want to block it in, so I'd rather get it out first. Of course, it can't be captured because it's defended by my knight. Knight f6, h3. This is somewhat of a cheeky move. I am setting up my bishop, a retreating square, if it were to be attacked. So here my opponent goes for quick counterplay with c5, e3, and goes for queen b6. Now queen b6 is not a bad move per se, but it does violate the rule of not moving the queen early on. On the other hand, he does make a good point. As my bishop left its initial spot on c1, I no longer have any defenders on the b2 square. Now, if I were to play b3, that would prove that the queen move was useful because it created a weakness in my structure. So instead, I decided to go knight d2, saying, even if you take, I will get very, very good counterplay. Because just look at that. I have many pieces developed, unlike Ibrahimli, whose only developing move so far was the queen and the knight. Knight e4, still trying to put pressure. And here I engage, because that's the only way you can expose that king. With some trades, you need to open up the position. D takes, knight d2. I have threats over there. C takes, E takes, and here my opponent is at crossroads. Of course, if black does not take a pawn, the whole queen sortie doesn't make any sense. So either take on d4 or b2. Now, here's a moment for you to stop and decide which pawn would you take. Now, what Ibrahimli did, he took on d4. I feel that this is somewhat more dangerous, as the arrows showed that d8 square is a potential checkmating square which wouldn't be exposed if black were to take on b2. So taking on b2 would have been a better try, even though after c3 white's chances are better. As knight c6, there's knight takes e4, and this queen is still very much exposed. Now, if you take here, that'd be a big mistake, of course, because of rook c1, and the bishop and queen is attacked at the same time. And now you can see why you'd need to develop your pieces. You'd never run into geometrical ideas like this if the queen was still back on d8. But Ibrahimli did take on d4 first, c3, queen d5, bishop e3. And now the e doubled pawns are kind of under some investigation by my pieces. I have a check there or queen c2. They're easy targets. Also, it's a doubled pawn. So yes, I'm technically down a pawn, but in reality, it's not as big of a deal. Because of the doubled nature, those pawns are not as good when they're side by side. And here Ibrahimli makes a big mistake, plays f5. It would have been much better to understand the dire nature of the position and try to castle as quickly as possible. Probably with a slightly better position for white. But black was insisting on playing f5, basically opening up the death valley of chess, which is always something you should be cautioned to do. Why? Well, just like in Among Us, if you go to the Death Valley, you can disappear without anyone ever noticing you existed. Same thing in chess. This is the diagonal where you can meet your doom quite quickly. So f5, bishop c4. Notice that all that I do is quick development and trying to take full advantage of the fact that Ibrahimli isn't really paying too much attention of developing his pieces. Queen c6, queen e2, setting up a threat, also still pending if I'm going to castle short or long. Knight d7. Now this is critical moment number 2. The critical moment for Ibrahimli was which pawn to take, but this is a critical moment for me. Well, I can decide to castle long and decide to castle short, but I can also engage. And with more play with my pieces and black's king still in the center, it does make a lot of sense to open it up. f3. And what makes f3 such a great move that I do not care about the fact that I'm going to quote-unquote be down a pawn and there are no more doubled pawns. Now I have clear vision on this weakened square. And I didn't mention that earlier, but with this pawn push, not only did black weaken these squares, but the e6 pawn became a backwards pawn and an undefended one. So an easy target. So naturally my opponent decides to go bishop d6, avoid that. Tries to lure me to take on e6, but I'm not falling for any sort of temptation. I keep on developing. So this is actually part of the art of attack. You've got to keep on going with the momentum. If I were to take this pawn, there is this very clever move of knight e5, sort of turning the tables. If bishop takes, knight d3 check, I have to react to this check. And after rook takes c8 is actually black who is better, one single move away from castling, and these pawns are rolling down the board. So I said a firm no to taking on e6 and continue on with my attack. a6 takes. Now I'm not taking just to take a pawn, I'm taking that to open up this position. Of course, castling is no longer possible because when I take here, it would be a check. And the f5 pawn falls as well. So Ibrahimli correctly tries to close it down. Bishop d4, eyeing the pawns on g7 and e6, e5. And again, now you see the problem of these open diagonals. Now there is no way that black can castle. But momentum is critical when you're attacking. So in this position, you've got to come up with a plan. So I do advise you to take a little pause here and think about ways how you can go and roll with your punches and your attack. Hope you had a quick pause, thought about plenty of candidate moves. I would consider going queen g4 even, sacrificing, coming on in there, or go queen h5 with similar ideas, giving up a piece for the attack. But then I decided I should go bishop d5. It's an easy move. My bishop cannot be captured. I would capture the queen for that. That's a bad trade. Queen c7. And here I noticed that even though my opponent's king is in the middle, it's still sort of safe due to that pawn wedge on e5 and f4. So my main goal should be to somehow get rid of that, even at a cost of a piece. I played knight c4, sacrificing the bishop, but it ain't no matter because those rooks don't communicate and the king is in the middle. E takes d4. Of course, if black does not take, I am going to overrun my opponent. So taking is the only critical choice. E5. So it's not about pieces anymore, it's about piece activity. Notice that almost all of my pieces are involved in the attack. And if my opponent takes, rook e1, ultimately all of my pieces would join up and this attack is decisive. So my opponent decides to go bishop e7, but now I have knight d6 check. King d8 runs into knight f7 check and I take that exchange. So king f8 was played, but this actually ends up to be losing due to this beautiful move of queen h5, and there is no stopping of checkmate. There's mate threats on e8 and f7, You can block this because it's mate in 1. Those squares are covered again, and the queen delivers the final blow. You can try to stop that idea of mating there. This is what happened. If knight f6, queen f7 is mate, but after knight takes c5, queen e8 was checkmate. So I hope you liked this video of how to attack and the art of attacking. All that you have to remember, if your opponent breaks the basic rules, brings out the queen out early, does not develop, and does not castle, you should actually do the opposite. Go on, put all your pieces out, and then you may be able to play in the beautiful style of Mikhail Tal. Thank you so much for watching. Do like or subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, do post it below this video. And with all that, have a good day.